On the night Scheherazade began a new tale. The wind outside the palace carried the scent of dust and distant roads. King Shahryar noticed it at once, though he could not have said why. Perhaps it was because the story she promised was not born of the sea or sealed jars, but of travel of time, measured in footsteps and years. He leaned back upon his throne as the torches flickered, and the chamber grew quiet enough to hear a single breath held too long. Scheherazade spoke of a merchant, prosperous but ordinary, whose life had been shaped by balance rather than ambition. He traveled each year to distant lands, threaded furly, returned home to his family, and believed himself favored by fate not because he was great, but because he was careful. One afternoon, weary from the road, he rested beneath a tree whose shade was thick and inviting. There, thinking nothing of consequence, he tossed aside a date pit after eating his meal. The pit struck the earth. That small sound echoed like thunder in the story. From the air itself emerged a jinn, vast and terrible, his face darkened by grief older than mountains. His eyes burned not with rage alone, but with a sorrow so deep it had sharpened into cruelty. He declared that the merchant had slain his son, struck dead by the careless throw of the pit. Justice, the jinn proclaimed, demanded blood for blood. Shahryar felt the familiar tightening in his chest. Accidental guilt, unintended consequence. How his silly lives were undone by a single moment. The merchant pleaded, swore to ignorance, begged for mercy, but the jinn's grief allowed no escape. Still, the creature granted one concession, a year's delay, so the merchant might return home, settle his affairs, and prepare for death. Scheherazade lingered on that year. She described the merchant's return to his family, the weight of unspoken doom pressing upon every meal, every laugh, every ordinary moment turned precious by its impending end. He put his house in order, wrote his will, embraced his children as though trying to memorize the shape of them. When the year was complete, he returned to the appointed place beneath the same tree, carrying no weapon, no hope, only acceptance. The jinn arrived at sunset. As the blade of fate hovered, 3 travelers appeared, each drawn by curiosity, chance, or destiny. An old man leading a deer by a cord was the first. He listened to the merchant's tale and was moved by it, for the deer beside him was bound by a story stranger still. He offered to tell it in exchange for a portion of the merchant, his life's bread. The jinn agreed. Shahrazade's voice shifted, folding one story into another like silk layered upon silk. The old man spoke of betrayal, of a wife transformed by jealousy, of magic misused and regret that could not be undone. When the tale ended, the jinn lessened the merchant's sentence by a third. A second old man arrived, bearing 2 hounds. His story followed, darker and heavier, filled with envy and punishment. Again, the jinn listened, and again, a portion of the merchant's debt was lifted. By the time the third traveler appeared, night had fully claimed the land. His tale was the most terrible of all, woven from treachery within families and love corrupted by fear. When it ended, the jinn stood silent for a long moment, his vast shape trembling as though burdened by memory. The merchant was spared. As Scheherazade paused, Shahryar found himself thinking not of the jinn, but of the year granted to the merchant. A delay that changed nothing in law, yet transformed everything in meaning. Time had been both gift and burden, mercy and torment. How many times had he denied that gift to others, believing certainty kinder than waiting? Is justice always so fragile? The king asked quietly. Scheherazade answered without hesitation. Justice that ignores the heart becomes cruelty, she said, and cruelty, once named law, devours its own maker. The story continued. Scheherazade spoke of how the travelers parted ways, their lives forever altered by the meeting beneath the tree. The merchant returned home, changed not by wealth or power, but by the knowledge that life could hinge on a moment too small to notice. He lived carefully after that, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Shahryar listened as the lesson unfolded without accusation. The merchant's fate was not shaped by intent, but by consequence. The jinn's rage was born of grief, not malice. Even mercy, when granted, carried weight and responsibility. The palace felt different as the night wore on. Shahryar noticed the absence of dread in his own breathing. The stories had become more than delay. They were mirrors placed carefully before him, angled so he could not avoid his own reflection. When Scheherazade ended the tale, dawn was close. "Tomorrow," she said, "I will tell you the stories the old men told beneath the tree." Shahryar nodded once. Another night passed without blood. As days followed nights and nights followed stories. The rhythm of the kingdom changed. The sword remained sheathed. The vizier's face, once hollow with guilt, slowly softened. The guards stood with less tension in their shoulders. Fear had not vanished, but it no longer ruled every breath. Yet Shahryar knew the danger had not ended. Mercy granted once could be mistaken for weakness. Delay could become expectation. An expectation, if betrayed, could awaken cruelty fiercer than before. He wrestled with this thought alone in the early hours, pacing beneath arches where his footsteps echoed like unanswered questions. When he next saw Scheherazade, he studied her with renewed caution. She was not merely a storyteller now. She was an architect of time, shaping nights, bending fate by inches rather than force. "You risk much," he said, "if your stories fail." She inclined her head. "So does every ruler who chooses cruelty," she replied. "The difference is only when the cost is paid." Her words followed him long after she withdrew. The city beyond the palace walls had begun to change its stories too. Children no longer whispered about the king as a monster of dawn. Instead, they spoke of a ruler who listened, who waited. Hope moved quietly, afraid to be seen, but present all the same. That night, Shahryar dreamed of the tree beneath which the merchant had waited. He dreamed of standing there himself, the weight of 1,000 lives pressing upon his shoulders, a djinn of grief towering before him, and in the dream, he did not reach for a sword. He asked for time. When Donkamihi woke with the echo of Scheherazade's voice in his ears, and the unsettling realization that the oath he had sworn was no longer unbreakable. It was already breaking.